Imagine walking into Walmart for your usual grocery run, only to discover that one of your favorite foods is suddenly gone. Not on sale. Not moved to another aisle. Simply missing. At first, you might assume it's a temporary stocking problem. Maybe someone bought the last few packages. Maybe the next shipment is arriving tomorrow. But sometimes, there's a much bigger story happening behind the scenes. Every day, Walmart manages one of the largest grocery supply chains in the world. Thousands of trucks, millions of products, and suppliers spread across dozens of countries. To keep shelves stocked, Walmart constantly reviews demand, pricing, shipping costs, weather events, food safety concerns, and supplier performance. When one of those factors changes, purchase orders can change too. Sometimes Walmart reduces future shipments. Sometimes it delays deliveries. Sometimes it replaces one supplier with another. And occasionally, certain products disappear from shelves altogether. That doesn't always mean the food has been discontinued forever. It could be the result of a supplier shortage, poor harvests, higher transportation costs, packaging problems, import delays, food recalls, or simply changing customer demand. The important thing to remember is this. When a major retailer like Walmart changes its purchasing decisions, those changes can affect millions of shoppers across the country. Today's countdown looks at 9 types of foods that have experienced reduced availability, order changes, supplier disruptions, or inventory adjustments, along with the real-world reasons those situations can happen. Some of these products may already be harder to find in certain stores. Others may return quickly once supply chains recover. And a few remind us why keeping a well-stocked pantry is always a smart idea. By the time we reach number 1, you'll understand why even the largest grocery retailer in America isn't immune to supply chain challenges. Before we begin, if you enjoy grocery updates, food storage tips, preparedness advice, and practical ways to save money, subscribe to Prepper Pulse and turn on notifications. Every week, we help you stay informed so you can shop smarter and prepare before shortages become problems. Now, let's begin with number 9. Number 9. Frozen fruit. Starting our countdown at number 9. Frozen fruit. It may seem like one of the most dependable sections in the grocery store. After all, it's frozen. It lasts much longer than fresh fruit. And it's available year-round. But behind those freezer doors is a supply chain that's far more complicated than most shoppers realize. Many frozen fruits sold at major retailers like Walmart come from multiple growing regions around the world. Blueberries, strawberries, mangoes, mixed berries, and tropical fruit blends may all come from different farms, processors, and even different countries depending on the season. If poor weather reduces a harvest, if transportation costs suddenly increase, or if processing facilities experience delays, retailers may receive fewer shipments than expected. When that happens, companies like Walmart sometimes reduce or postpone purchase orders while waiting for supply to stabilize or while switching to alternative suppliers. From a shopper's perspective, the result often looks the same. The freezer shelf that was full last week now has empty spaces, or fewer varieties to choose from. Another challenge is freezer storage itself. Unlike shelf-stable foods, frozen products require continuous refrigeration from the processing plant all the way to the store. Any disruption along that chain can affect inventory planning, equipment maintenance, transportation delays, or regional weather events can all slow deliveries. Rising production costs have added another layer of pressure. Packaging, electricity, cold storage, labor, and transportation have all become more expensive in recent years. Retailers constantly evaluate whether certain products still make financial sense at current prices. Sometimes that means ordering smaller quantities until market conditions improve. Another factor many shoppers never see is demand. Frozen fruit has become increasingly popular for smoothies, home baking, yogurt bowls, and healthier breakfasts. When demand rises faster than suppliers can expand production, inventories can tighten quickly. That doesn't necessarily mean the product has been discontinued. It simply means supply hasn't caught up with demand. Fortunately, shortages of frozen fruit are often temporary. Once harvests improve or new shipments arrive, shelves usually begin filling again. Still, situations like this remind us why experienced shoppers don't wait until the last bag disappears. Keeping a few bags of frozen fruit in your freezer provides flexibility for breakfasts, desserts, and smoothies whenever fresh produce becomes harder to find. Frozen fruit earns the number 9 spot because it's one of the first grocery categories to reflect changes in harvests, transportation, and consumer demand, making it a product that retailers sometimes reduce or delay ordering when supply conditions become challenging. But the next food has faced an entirely different problem. It's a breakfast favorite found in millions of kitchens, yet disease outbreaks, rising production costs, and changing market conditions have repeatedly disrupted supplies in recent years. Number 8. Eggs. At number 8. Eggs. Few grocery items are as essential to American households. They're used for breakfast, baking, cooking, meal prep, and hundreds of everyday recipes. Because they're so common, many shoppers assume they'll always be available whenever they visit Walmart. But the reality is far more complicated. The egg industry has experienced repeated disruptions over the past several years. One of the biggest reasons has been outbreaks of avian influenza, commonly known as bird flu. When commercial poultry flocks are affected, millions of laying hens may be removed from production to help prevent the disease from spreading. That immediately reduces the number of eggs entering the supply chain. For a retailer as large as Walmart, even a small reduction in national production can have a noticeable impact. Suppliers may deliver fewer cartons than expected. Distribution centers may receive limited quantities, and stores may temporarily reduce the variety of egg products available. In some cases, retailers adjust purchase orders simply because suppliers cannot guarantee consistent deliveries. Instead of ordering products that may not arrive on schedule, they focus on securing the inventory that's actually available. Another challenge is cost. Feed prices, fuel, packaging, labor, and transportation all influence how much eggs cost to produce. When those expenses rise, retailers must carefully balance inventory levels with customer demand. Some specialty egg products may become harder to find than standard varieties because suppliers prioritize their highest volume items. Weather can also play a role. Extreme heat, winter storms, or transportation disruptions can delay deliveries from farms to distribution centers. Since eggs are highly perishable, timing is critical. Even short delays can affect store inventory. Most of these situations are temporary. As production improves and supply chains recover, shelves are typically restocked. But the temporary shortages serve as a reminder that even everyday grocery staples depend on a complex system working smoothly from farm to store. That's why many preparedness-minded shoppers keep a few shelf-stable alternatives at home, such as powdered eggs for emergency use or ingredients that can substitute for eggs in certain recipes. It's not about expecting shortages. It's about having options when unexpected disruptions occur. Eggs earn the number 8 spot because disease outbreaks, production challenges, transportation issues, and changing market conditions can all influence supplier deliveries, leading major retailers to adjust orders until supply becomes more stable. But the next food has faced a completely different challenge. It comes from oceans around the world, depends on international shipping, and has become increasingly vulnerable to global supply chain disruptions that can leave grocery shelves looking very different from one month to the next. Number 7. Canned tuna. At number 7. Canned tuna. For decades, it has been one of the most dependable foods in American grocery stores. It's affordable, packed with protein, requires no refrigeration, and can stay in the pantry for years. That's exactly why millions of families keep several cans on hand. But despite its reputation for reliability, canned tuna isn't immune to supply chain challenges. Every can begins with commercial fishing fleets operating thousands of miles from your local Walmart. The fish must be caught, processed, cooked, canned, sealed, labeled, loaded onto cargo ships, transported through ports, moved to distribution centers, and finally delivered to individual stores. If just one step in that chain experiences delays, the entire process can slow down. Weather is one of the biggest factors. Powerful storms can keep fishing vessels in port for days or even weeks. When boats aren't catching fish, processing plants receive fewer shipments. That eventually leads to lower production. International shipping can create additional problems. Many canned tuna products depend on overseas processing facilities before reaching the United States. Port congestion, container shortages, customs delays, or higher freight costs can all reduce the number of shipments arriving on time. When suppliers can't guarantee steady deliveries, major retailers sometimes reduce future purchase orders until inventory becomes more predictable. Another challenge is rising production costs. Steel cans, cooking oil, packaging materials, fuel, labor, and transportation have all become more expensive. Manufacturers occasionally limit production of slower-selling varieties so they can focus on their most popular products. That means shoppers may notice fewer flavor options or fewer package sizes on store shelves. Demand also plays a major role. Whenever severe weather is forecast or emergency preparedness becomes a major topic in the news, canned tuna often disappears quickly because it's one of the first shelf-stable proteins people buy. A sudden surge in demand can empty shelves much faster than suppliers can replace them. That doesn't necessarily mean Walmart has stopped selling canned tuna. It often means available inventory is being allocated carefully while suppliers work to replenish stock. Preparedness-minded shoppers understand this pattern. Instead of waiting until shelves begin to empty, they gradually build a small reserve over time. Buying a few extra cans during regular shopping trips is often far easier than trying to find them during periods of unusually high demand. Canned tuna earns the number 7 spot because its long global supply chain, dependence on commercial fishing, transportation costs, and changing consumer demand can all influence supplier deliveries, leading retailers to adjust inventory orders when supplies become uncertain. But the next food faces an even bigger challenge. It's found in nearly every kitchen, yet changing weather patterns, lower harvests, and rising production costs have made it one of the most closely watched grocery items in recent years. Number 6. Olive oil. We've reached number 6. Olive oil. For many families, it's a kitchen essential. It's used for cooking, baking, roasting vegetables, making salad dressings, marinating meat, and countless everyday recipes. But over the past few years, olive oil has become one of the most unpredictable grocery items on store shelves. The biggest reason begins thousands of miles away, in the olive groves. Countries like Spain, Italy, Greece, Portugal, and Turkey produce a significant portion of the world's olive oil. When those regions experience severe droughts, extreme heat, wildfires, or poor harvest conditions, the global olive supply can shrink dramatically. Less fruit means less oil, and less oil means fewer bottles reaching retailers around the world. For a company the size of Walmart, that's a major challenge. When suppliers produce smaller quantities than expected, retailers often adjust future purchase orders based on availability. Instead of receiving every variety they request, stores may receive fewer shipments or a more limited selection. Another factor is production cost. Harvesting olives is labor-intensive. After harvesting, the olives must be transported quickly to processing facilities where the oil is extracted. From there, it's bottled, packaged, shipped across oceans, and distributed to stores. Every step adds cost. When fuel prices, shipping expenses, or packaging costs rise, the final price on the shelf often rises as well. Some manufacturers respond by prioritizing their best-selling products. That can mean fewer specialty oils, flavored varieties, or larger bottle sizes reaching retailers. Shoppers may notice empty spaces where certain brands once sat a day, or they may find only 1 or 2 sizes instead of an entire selection. Demand has also changed. As more people look for healthier cooking oils, olive oil has become increasingly popular. Higher demand combined with smaller harvests creates additional pressure throughout the supply chain. Even when Walmart wants to order more inventory, suppliers may not always be able to meet those requests immediately. Fortunately, these shortages are often temporary. Harvest conditions improve, new production seasons begin, and global supplies gradually recover. Still, Olive oil reminds us how closely grocery shelves depend on weather events happening thousands of miles away. Preparedness-minded shoppers often keep an extra unopened bottle in the pantry. Not because they expect it to disappear forever, but because they understand how quickly global supply disruptions can affect everyday grocery items. Olive oil earns the number 6 spot because changing weather, reduced harvests, higher production costs, and international shipping challenges can all influence supplier availability, leading major retailers to carefully manage future inventory orders. But the next food has faced an entirely different set of problems. It's one of America's favorite beverages, depends on harvests from around the world, and even small disruptions can quickly send prices climbing while reducing supplies on grocery shelves. Number 5. Coffee. We're entering the top 5. And at number 5 is a grocery item that millions of Americans refuse to start their day without. Coffee. For many people, it's more than just a beverage. It's part of their daily routine. The first cup in the morning. The afternoon pick-me-up. The familiar aroma that signals the beginning of another day. That's why even small changes in coffee supplies quickly get shoppers' attention. Unlike many grocery products, most coffee sold in the United States isn't grown domestically. It travels thousands of miles before reaching your local Walmart. Coffee beans are harvested in countries such as Brazil, Vietnam, Colombia, Honduras, and Ethiopia. After harvesting, they must be processed, dried, shipped across oceans, roasted, packaged, and distributed to retailers across the country. Every step depends on a global supply chain working smoothly. When something interrupts that chain, the effects can be felt almost immediately. Weather has become one of the biggest challenges. Extended droughts, unexpected frosts, heavy rainfall, and changing climate conditions can significantly reduce coffee harvests. Even one poor growing season in a major producing country can tighten global supplies. Transportation creates another obstacle. Coffee often travels through multiple ports before arriving in the United States. Shipping delays, container shortages, higher freight costs, or labor disruptions at ports can slow deliveries and increase costs for suppliers. When suppliers face uncertainty about future shipments, retailers may adjust purchase orders until inventory becomes more predictable. Production costs have also continued to rise. Fertilizer, fuel, packaging materials, labor, and international shipping all contribute to the final price consumers see on store shelves. Manufacturers sometimes respond by focusing on their highest-selling products while temporarily reducing production of specialty blends, flavored coffees, or less popular package sizes. That can leave shoppers with fewer choices than they're used to seeing. Demand also remains incredibly strong. Coffee is one of the most consistently purchased grocery items in America. Even during periods of economic uncertainty, many consumers continue buying it regularly. When demand remains high while production slows, shelves can empty faster than expected. Fortunately, most supply issues are temporary. As new harvests arrive and shipments move through the supply chain, inventories generally recover. Still, coffee serves as a perfect example of how events taking place thousands of miles away can eventually influence what appears on grocery shelves in your neighborhood. Prepared shoppers often keep an extra unopened bag or container at home. Not because they expect coffee to disappear permanently, but because they know supply disruptions rarely come with advance warning. Coffee earns the number 5 spot because global harvest conditions, international shipping, rising production costs, and steady consumer demand can all affect supplier deliveries, prompting large retailers to carefully manage inventory and purchasing decisions. But the next food has become even more unpredictable. Number 4. Chocolate. We've reached the final 4. And at number 4 is a grocery favorite that many people never imagined could face supply problems. Chocolate. Whether it's candy bars, baking chocolate, chocolate chips, hot cocoa, or your favorite sweet snack, chocolate is one of the most popular products in nearly every Walmart store. But behind every chocolate bar is a global supply chain that's becoming increasingly difficult to manage. It all begins with cocoa beans. Unlike many crops, cocoa grows in a relatively small number of tropical regions. In fact, a large share of the world's cocoa supply comes from just 2 countries, Ivory Coast and Ghana. When poor weather strikes those regions, heavy rainfall damages crops, extended drought stresses cocoa trees, or plant diseases spread through farms, the effects can ripple across the entire global market. A smaller harvest means manufacturers have fewer cocoa beans to work with. That often leads to higher prices and tighter supplies. For retailers like Walmart, this creates difficult purchasing decisions. Suppliers may not be able to deliver every product in the quantities retailers request. Instead, manufacturers often prioritize their most popular items while temporarily reducing production of seasonal products, specialty chocolates, or slower-selling varieties. Another challenge is rising production costs. Sugar, milk, packaging, transportation, energy, and labor have all become more expensive. Even if cocoa production remains stable, increasing manufacturing costs can still affect how much inventory reaches store shelves. International shipping adds another layer of complexity. Cocoa beans travel thousands of miles before they're transformed into the chocolate products consumers recognize. Any disruption involving ports, cargo ships, trucking, or distribution centers can delay deliveries. When those delays occur, retailers sometimes adjust purchase orders until supply becomes more predictable. Demand remains incredibly strong throughout the year. But during holidays like Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day, and Easter, chocolate sales surge dramatically. If production has already been affected by poor harvests or shipping delays, those seasonal demand spikes can empty shelves much faster than expected. That's why shoppers occasionally notice fewer brands, limited package sizes, or missing seasonal products during certain times of the year. Most of these situations improve as new cocoa harvests enter the market and supply chains stabilize. Still, chocolate demonstrates how dependent everyday grocery items are on weather, agriculture, and international trade. Prepared shoppers don't panic when they notice temporary shortages. They simply understand that global events often influence local grocery shelves in ways most people never see. Chocolate earns the number 4 spot because changing cocoa harvests, rising production costs, international shipping challenges, and seasonal demand can all influence supplier availability, leading major retailers to carefully adjust inventory orders when supplies become limited. But now we're down to the final 3. The next grocery item has faced repeated supply challenges from weather disasters, disease, and shrinking harvests, making it one of the most closely watched foods in supermarkets today. Number 3. Orange juice. We're down to the final 3. And at number 3 is a breakfast staple that's been under pressure for years. Orange juice. For decades, grabbing a carton of orange juice during a Walmart grocery run was almost automatic. The shelves were full, the brands were familiar, and supplies seemed endless. But behind the scenes, orange juice has become one of the most challenging grocery products to keep consistently stocked. The biggest reason starts in the orange groves. Florida has long been one of America's largest orange-producing regions. But in recent years, growers have faced one setback after another. Powerful hurricanes have damaged orchards. Periods of extreme heat and drought have stressed orange trees. And one of the biggest threats of all has been citrus greening disease, a bacterial infection that weakens trees, reduces fruit production, and has dramatically lowered harvests in many growing areas. When fewer oranges are harvested, juice manufacturers immediately feel the impact. Processing plants have less fruit available. Production slows, and suppliers may not be able to fulfill every order retailers request. For Walmart, that can mean adjusting future purchase orders based on what suppliers are actually able to deliver. Instead of every size, every brand, and every variety arriving on schedule, stores may temporarily receive fewer options or smaller shipments. Another challenge is cost. Producing orange juice isn't as simple as squeezing fruit into a bottle. The oranges must be harvested, transported, processed, pasteurized, packaged, kept refrigerated, and delivered through a carefully managed cold chain. Every step adds expense. When fuel prices, labor costs, packaging materials, or transportation costs increase, suppliers often face difficult production decisions. Demand remains steady because orange juice continues to be one of the most popular breakfast beverages in America. That means even modest supply reductions can become noticeable on store shelves. When inventories tighten, manufacturers frequently focus on producing their highest-selling products first. Specialty blends, larger containers, or lower-demand varieties may temporarily become harder to find. Fortunately, supply conditions can improve as new harvests arrive and growers recover from difficult seasons. But orange juice remains one of the clearest examples of how weather, agriculture, and plant disease can influence what shoppers see in grocery stores. Prepared shoppers understand that even everyday breakfast staples depend on healthy harvests and reliable transportation. Keeping a small backup supply of shelf-stable beverages or alternative breakfast drinks can provide extra flexibility whenever fresh refrigerated products become temporarily harder to find. Orange juice earns the number 3 spot because hurricanes, citrus diseases, reduced harvests, rising production costs, and transportation challenges have repeatedly affected supplier availability, forcing retailers to carefully manage inventory until supplies recover. Only 2 foods remain. The next one is a kitchen essential found in millions of homes, yet global harvest problems and unpredictable weather have made it one of the most closely watched grocery items in recent years. Number 2. Rice. We've reached the runner-up. And at number 2 is one of the most important staple foods on the planet. Rice. For billions of people, rice isn't just another item on the grocery list. It's the foundation of daily meals. Whether it's served alongside chicken, mixed into soups, used in casseroles, or prepared as a simple side dish, rice is one of the most purchased foods in supermarkets around the world. That's exactly why any disruption in its supply chain attracts so much attention. Unlike many grocery products, the United States imports a significant amount of specialty rice, while domestic production also depends heavily on weather, water availability, and successful harvests. When drought reduces irrigation supplies, flooding damages rice fields, or extreme weather delays harvesting, the effects can spread far beyond the farms themselves. Global events also play a major role. Several major rice-producing countries have occasionally introduced export restrictions or temporary limits in an effort to protect their own domestic supplies. When that happens, less rice enters the international market. Prices often rise, and retailers around the world begin competing for a smaller available supply. For Walmart, that creates a difficult balancing act. Suppliers may not be able to provide every variety or every package size that stores normally carry. Instead, retailers often prioritize their highest demand products while reducing orders for slower-selling varieties until supplies become more stable. Transportation adds another layer of complexity. Rice is shipped in enormous quantities by truck, rail, and cargo ship. Any disruption involving ports, fuel prices, container availability, or freight costs can delay deliveries and increase expenses throughout the supply chain. Consumer behavior can make the situation even more noticeable. Whenever inflation, severe weather, or economic uncertainty dominates the news, rice is often one of the very first grocery items shoppers begin stocking up on. Because it stores well and feeds a family for relatively little cost, demand can spike almost overnight. Even if suppliers continue producing rice, shelves can empty much faster than distribution centers are able to replenish them. That doesn't necessarily mean Walmart has stopped ordering rice. It often means available inventory is being allocated carefully while suppliers work to catch up. Experienced shoppers understand this cycle. Instead of waiting until shelves look empty, they gradually build a small pantry reserve over time. Buying one extra bag during normal shopping trips is often enough to avoid last-minute stress during temporary shortages. Rice earns the number 2 spot because global harvest conditions, export policies, transportation challenges, and sudden surges in consumer demand can all influence supplier availability, leading major retailers to carefully adjust inventory orders when supplies become uncertain. Now only one food remains. It's found in nearly every American kitchen. Its price affects countless other grocery products. And when supplies become tight, the impact can be felt throughout the entire supermarket, not just in a single aisle. Number 1. Beef. We've finally reached number 1. And this is the grocery item whose supply chain may be more complex than any other on today's countdown. Beef. From ground beef and steaks to roasts and stew meat, beef is one of the most important products sold at Walmart. But it's also one of the most difficult foods to produce consistently. Unlike crops that can be planted and harvested within a single growing season, cattle require years to raise. That means today's supply is often the result of decisions ranchers made long before current market conditions ever existed. When drought strikes cattle-producing regions, ranchers often face difficult choices. Pastures dry out. Feed becomes more expensive. Water becomes harder to find. Some producers reduce the size of their herds simply because the cost of maintaining them becomes too high. Those decisions don't just affect the present. They can reduce beef supplies months, or even years, into the future. Processing capacity is another critical factor. After cattle leave the ranch, they must pass through processing facilities before reaching grocery stores. If labor shortages, equipment problems, or maintenance issues reduce processing capacity, fewer beef products can move through the supply chain. Even when there are enough cattle available, bottlenecks further down the chain can slow deliveries to retailers. Transportation also plays a major role. Fresh beef must be kept refrigerated throughout its journey. From processing plants to distribution centers and finally to Walmart stores, maintaining the cold chain is essential. Weather events, rising fuel costs, or trucking delays can all interrupt that process and force suppliers to adjust delivery schedules. Consumer demand has remained remarkably strong despite higher prices. Many families continue purchasing beef because it's a familiar source of protein and a centerpiece of countless meals. When demand stays high while production becomes more limited, retailers sometimes receive smaller allocations from suppliers than they originally requested. That can mean fewer package sizes, reduced selections, or temporary gaps in certain cuts of meat. It doesn't necessarily mean Walmart has stopped buying beef. It means suppliers are carefully managing limited production while retailers prioritize the products customers purchase most often. Prepared shoppers understand that fresh meat is one of the most vulnerable parts of the grocery supply chain. Many balance their shopping by keeping shelf-stable proteins such as canned tuna, canned chicken, beans, or frozen meats at home. Having alternatives provides flexibility whenever fresh meat supplies become temporarily tighter or more expensive. Beef earns the #1 spot because its production takes years, depends on weather, feed costs, processing capacity, transportation, and consumer demand, making it one of the most closely watched and carefully managed grocery categories in the entire retail industry. When people hear that a major retailer is adjusting food orders, it's easy to imagine the worst. But in many cases, these decisions are part of normal supply chain management. Retailers constantly respond to changing harvests, transportation challenges, production costs, seasonal demand, and supplier availability. The lesson isn't to panic. It's to stay informed. Building a small pantry, rotating your groceries, and shopping a little ahead of time can help your family stay prepared without overbuying or wasting food. If you enjoyed this countdown, subscribe to Prepper Pulse and turn on notifications. Every week, we bring you practical grocery updates, food storage strategies, and preparedness tips to help you stay one step ahead. Thanks for watching. Stay prepared, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next video.